My name is Kendall Shaw, I'm 32 years old, and until this morning, I held the position of COO at Shaw Riverfront Logistics. The boardroom door hadn't even fully closed behind me when my brother's voice cut through the air. We don't need someone living off legacy, Kendall. Easton, at 25, sporting a brand new NBA Rolex, gleaming under the Memphis sunshine pouring through the 12th floor windows, didn't wait for silence to descend. He pointed directly at me. Clear your office by tomorrow. Our father, the CEO, sat perfectly still at the head of the table. Last year, he had quietly transferred his voting shares to Easton. I'd been consistently delivering results, so nobody questioned it until this moment. The three outside directors were glued to their laptops. Not a single one of them even blinked. I gave a single nod, stood up, and walked out. If you've ever experienced the pain of being stabbed in the back by your own family at work, give this a like and subscribe. Tomorrow morning is when the real story really takes off. The following morning at precisely 7:15 a.m., I swiped my badge at the executive elevator and rode in complete silence to the 15th floor. The doors opened with a gentle chime, and the motion sensor lights flickered on ahead of me, illuminating the path to the glass entrance of my corner office. I pushed through the door, the ceiling behind me hissing softly as the pneumatic system activated. Emerson, who had been my assistant for the past 7 years, was already inside, perched on the edge of the reception desk, holding a steaming takeaway cup in one hand and his phone in the other. Kendall, your brother has totally lost his mind. You personally built nearly 40% of the high-profit margin lease portfolio, the real cash cow, starting when you were just 24 years old. He can't just erase a whole decade of strategic pipeline with one dramatic declaration in the boardroom. I didn't reply right away. I walked across the open space with deliberate steps, the sound of my heels muffled on the high-end concrete flooring. At the far end, I knelt down beside the sleek credenza and placed my thumb on the biometric scanner embedded in the wall safe. The panel unlocked with a soft click and slid open. Inside, there was only one item. A thick, expandable red-weld folder with corners worn from frequent use, the label handwritten in my neat block letters. I took it out carefully and placed it flat on the expansive desk surface. KS Warehouse Advisors, LLC. I said, flipping it open to the official incorporation documents, stamped exactly 4 years earlier. I created this entity as a tax-efficient pass-through vehicle specifically to optimize leases that cross multiple jurisdictions and state lines. Every single important contract specifically names it as the contractual lessor, creating a clear separation from the main operating company. Emerson moved closer, leaning over to examine the densely packed pages of text. The board actually reviewed and approved these amendments. They initialed every individual rider and schedule. They were fixated on phrases like accelerated depreciation benefits and like-kind exchange structuring, and never looked beyond the controlling entity designation at the very top. Never asked any follow-up questions or voiced any concerns. I navigated to the comprehensive portfolio summary sheet. 23 currently active lease agreements. Combined controllable square footage under management, $4.8 million. Current annualized revenue run rate, $28.4 million, showing a consistent 9.3% compound growth rate across the previous 6 consecutive quarters. Emerson slowly exhaled through his teeth. That segment is absolutely essential to our profitability. Correct. I closed the red-weld folder, put it into the waiting, slim carbon fiber briefcase sitting on the adjacent visitor chair, and secured the dual combination locks with 2 distinct clicks. And that lifeline has now been officially redirected to new ownership. He walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, shoved his hands deep into his pockets, and watched a long towboat pushing 3 loaded barges southward against the current. The standard renewal cycle begins in exactly 90 calendar days. Apex, Covenant, Delta. They all require your proprietary dynamic routing tables and lane optimization models. They won't sign off on anything without confirmation. They will receive full confirmation. I rotated the safe dial several times until the internal bolts were fully engaged. Then I slipped the mechanical override key into the inner pocket of my blazer. Identical algorithms, just operating under a different contractual lessor. Emerson turned back to face me. You're formally activating the full contingency protocol. The protocol was activated the moment Dad transferred voting control last year. I simply engineered the release mechanism in advance. He nodded once, understanding the implications. The mechanism is now fully deployed, completely operational. I checked the minimalist wall clock. 7:29 a.m. sharp. Inform facilities management that I'll be completely out of here by 11 a.m. No packing boxes, no outside movers needed. One briefcase only. Emerson paused at the office door for a moment. Kendall, your parents. Parents don't execute lease throughput commitments. I moved past him into the brightly lit hallway. Shippers and tenants do. The elevator arrived within seconds. I pressed G for garage level. The descent was smooth and uninterrupted. At the sub-level lobby, security personnel acknowledged my exit with a casual wave. No additional badge scan was required to leave. I walked across the climate-controlled plaza, went down the dedicated garage ramp, and found my sedan in the assigned executive slot, C4. I placed the briefcase on the passenger seat, started the engine with a low purr, and put the car in reverse. The backup camera showed empty space. I drove up the spiral ramp, emerged into daylight, and merged smoothly onto Riverside Drive. The Mississippi River sparkled to my left, calm, vast, and unchanging. I had spent a decade building and maintaining the family's infrastructure barriers. Now, the entire flow of water belonged exclusively to my direction. I accelerated firmly eastbound, kept a steady pressure on the gas pedal, and watched the headquarters building gradually shrink to a distant silver reflection in the rearview mirror. That same afternoon, around 2 p.m., I was driving east on I-240, stopped at a traffic light, when the dashboard console flashed, Office Landline auto-forwarded to Vehicle Bluetooth System. I pressed the accept button on the steering wheel without taking my eyes off the road. Kendall Shaw, Craig Brooks, Apex Warehousing. His voice had the familiar background noise of a warehouse, the hum of forklifts, the beeping of backup alarms, the scraping of pallet jacks on concrete. Easton just sent out an email announcing he's the new point of contact. Our master lease hits the 60-day renewal mark. We committed to your proprietary routing algorithms, 18% hard-coded savings. What exactly is going on here? He'll figure it out soon enough. Craig made a sharp sound, somewhere between a laugh and a growl. The signature block isn't tied to the family name. Send over the renewal package. I'll circulate and sign the terms through the actual lessor entity before the end of the business day. Emailing now. The line went dead. I maintained my lane position, my hands steady at 10 and 2. 9 minutes ticked by on the dashboard clock. My personal cell phone vibrated against the center console, the caller ID displaying the CEO's direct extension. I thumbed accept. Kendall, Jongju? Easton's words came out in a rush, his voice rising in volume. Craig is refusing to extend without the original documents in hand. I eased into the right lane, signaling for the upcoming exit. 4 years ago, I completely re-engineered the leasing framework from the ground up. KS Advisor functions as the dedicated leasing intermediary, a distinct layer designed for tax efficiency and liability isolation. Dad reviewed and initialed every rider, interpreting the structure as routine optimization. No one at the time projected that the entity could sustain full independent operations. You can't possibly. I ended the call. I navigated the off-ramp, merged onto surface streets, and looped back toward downtown in under 4 minutes. I pulled into the visitor parking deck and found an open space on level 3. Elevator ride to 15. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I inserted my keycard and pushed the office door open one last time. The brass nameplate was still mounted. Shaw Riverfront Logistics. I took a small Phillips screwdriver from the desk drawer, loosened the 4 corner screws, lifted the heavy plate free, and let it fall with a metallic clank into the cardboard disposal box next to the credenza. Laptop powered down. I launched the secure erase protocol on the local SSD, watched the progress bar crawl to completion, and then disconnected all the peripherals. Final visual sweep. Filing cabinets bare, whiteboard clean, personal items gone. I stepped backward into the corridor and pulled the door closed. The electronic lock clicked shut with a definitive thunk. Back in the garage, I slid behind the wheel, backed out of the spot, and drove down the spiral ramp toward the exit barrier. The gate arm lifted automatically. I accelerated southbound, destination Germantown, the skyline fading behind me. 2 days later, Wednesday, 6:30 p.m., the front door camera pinged on my phone as the first SUV pulled into the driveway. I opened the door to Reed, a project manager with 10 years in the trenches with me, flanked by 6 others carrying laptop bags and rolled-up blueprints. Core team assembled, Reed said as he crossed the threshold. Non-compete only locks Tennessee accounts. Arkansas and Mississippi are wide open. I led them through the foyer into the living room with its oak herringbone floors. The sectional sofa had been pushed back, and 8 folding chairs were arranged around the low walnut coffee table. Reed made quick introductions: 3 operations leads, 2 data analysts, and 1 regulatory compliance specialist. All had tendered their resignations at 9 a.m. sharp. Lennon, my college roommate turned M&A counsel for warehousing transactions, arrived last, wheeling a slim aluminum briefcase packed with fresh drafts. We took our seats. I connected my laptop to the 75-inch wall screen and opened the KS Advisor pitch deck. Goal: validate the model at scale without legacy branding. I clicked to the site overview slide. 2 pilot warehouses, Little Rock and Jackson. Combined footprint, 600,000 tolerant square feet. 6-month memorandum of understanding with purchase option at fair market value. Lennon handed out stapled copies. Landlords pre-qualified. Base lease rate locked 15% below current market comps. Contingent on our immediate occupancy and CapEx commitment. Reed flipped to the equipment schedule. Racking, conveyors, WMS integration fully budgeted in the capital line. Turnkey installation within 30 days of move-in. An ops lead raised a finger. Routing, engine, and lane optimization software? My proprietary codebase already migrated to a private cloud. Access keys issued upon execution. Lennon opened the compensation folder. Base salary increased 15% across the board. 1% fully diluted equity granted day 1. 4-year linear vesting, full acceleration on change of control. The compliance specialist scanned the benefits page. Medical, dental, 401k match, effective day 1, same carrier. Upgraded dental plan, 6% match. Reed leaned in. Go live timeline. Occupancy in 30 calendar days. First inbound truckload 45 days post-signature. A brief pause, then unanimous head nods. Lennon produced a stack of blue ink pens. MOU execution first, then individual, offer letters. I signed the cover page of the MOU, dated it, and slid it clockwise. 7 signatures followed in rapid succession, each pen stroke deliberate under the warm recessed lighting. Reed capped his pen with finality. We are officially operational. Lennon gathered the executed originals. Electronic filing with the Secretary of State tonight. LLC operating agreement amendment queued for tomorrow morning. I passed out the pre-printed offer letters, names, titles, and compensation figures already filled in. Each team member reviewed, initialed the acknowledgement box, signed, and dated. Handshakes circled the table. Firm committed. By 8:17 p.m., the group had filed out, headlights sweeping the cul-de-sac. As engines started, I secured the deadbolt, poured a glass of water from the kitchen island, and spread the signed originals across the dining table for final review. Phase 1. Locked and loaded. 1 week later, Monday, 9 a.m., my laptop pinged with an incoming Zoom link. Emerson appeared on the screen, sitting in his home office, with shelves of color-coded binders behind him. Kendall, the board just called an emergency session for 10 a.m. Your name is the only agenda item. Employment status clarification. They expect you in the 12th floor conference room. I muted the live drone feed from the Jackson pilot site streaming on my secondary monitor. Decline. My calendar is blocked. He leaned closer to the camera. Your father is running the meeting. The 3 outside directors are demanding a full report. Understood. I clicked end on the Zoom window. The house phone rang instantly. Caller ID flashing. Mom cell. I counted 4 rings before lifting the receiver. Kendall. Patricia's voice had the polished southern drawl she reserved for bridge club and charity galas. Your father wants you to come downtown and talk this through, not as a former executive, as his daughter. I watched the Baton Rouge landlord's shared screen cursor blink in the lease draft, waiting for my final edits on the indemnity clause. Relay the message that I'm tied up in a critical negotiation. I rejected the auto-populated board meeting invite on my phone. Patricia paused, the silence heavy. He's concerned. We both are. Blood runs thicker than any contract, sweetheart. The landlord messaged in the chat box. Green light on final red lines, I replied. Advance to Section 8.2, cross-default provisions. Blood doesn't retroactively rewrite board votes that strip a decade of documented revenue contribution. I kept my voice even. I have a firm cutoff at 9:15. She exhaled softly. Kendall, please. I placed the receiver back in the cradle. toggled the ringer to Do Not Disturb, and rejoined the Baton Rouge video conference. Sorry for the brief interruption. I addressed the grid of 8 participants: Lennon, Reed, 2 newly hired site superintendents, and 3 equipment vendors. Let's lock in the 1.1 million square foot expansion package. Reed screen shared the updated financial model, phased capital expenditures over 18 months, projected internal rate of return exceeding 22%, sensitivity analysis on fuel surcharge volatility. Lennon scrolled to the incentive rider. Economic Development Authority confirmed the 10-year payment in lieu of taxes agreement. 75% abatement year 1, stepping down 5% annually. A vendor representative inquired about electrical infrastructure, redundant utility feeds, dual substation transformers specified in the RFP, uninterruptible power supply covering all automated sortation lanes. We advanced slide by slide. Target occupancy, 3rd quarter. Initial revenue recognition, 4th quarter. Positive cash flow, month 8, post-go live. By 10:51 a.m., the term sheet was pristine. Lennon generated DocuSign envelopes and distributed links to each party. Electronic signatures arrived in order. Landlord entity, KS Advisors LLC. Local power cooperative. Transaction sealed. I powered down the laptop at 11:04 a.m. The board line showed 0 missed calls. Dad's mobile displayed no new texts. Phase 2 fully capitalized. 3 weeks later, Thursday, 11 a.m., the Memphis Warehousing Symposium filled the Marriott Grand Ballroom with over 500 supply chain executives, badge lanyards clacking against coffee cups. I mounted the main stage beneath a crisp KS Advisor banner in navy and silver. No trace of the old family logo anywhere in sight. Craig Brooks had delivered the introduction 4 minutes prior, Apex National Vice President of Distribution, speaking in measured corporate tones. 0 reference to Shaw Riverfront. I advanced the remote to the opening slide. Apex National Fulfillment Framework, $20 million 3-year master services agreement. Apex National designates KS Advisors as sole lessor and routing optimization provider for 28 strategic nodes nationwide. I stated, my voice carrying through the house system. Projected annual volume, 42 million cartons processed. Fixed base rate with built-in performance escalators tied to on-time delivery and damage-free metrics. The next screen displayed the continental map, 28 red pins stretching from the Laredo crossdock to the Newark High Velocity Hub. Phase 1 activation, 2.4 million square feet operational by 1st quarter. Full national footprint live by 4th quarter next calendar year. Polite but enthusiastic applause swept the room. Smartphone cameras angled upward. Craig ascended the 3 steps to join me, a thick contract folio tucked under one arm. We positioned ourselves at the signing table draped in black linen. Dual pens, his Mont Blanc, mine, moved in unison across the execution blocks. The notary pressed her embossed seal beside each signature line. $20 million committed. We exchanged the standard grip and grin for the official photographer, then stepped aside as the moderator announced the next panel. By 1:18 p.m., my advanced team had claimed the new East Memphis headquarters, 200 contiguous square feet on the 8th floor of the Crescent Center Tower, floor-to-ceiling glass offering an unobstructed southern vista of the riverbend. Reed orchestrated the fiber optic technicians threading Cat6 cable through the raised floor grid. Lennon mounted the freshly issued Tennessee LLC certificate in a brushed steel frame beside the frosted glass reception desk. I toured the layout. 20 open-plan workstations with dual 27-inch monitors, 3 glass-walled conference pods equipped with 4K video bars, and 1 dedicated war room housing 4 85-inch dashboard screens already cycling real-time KPI feeds. The vendor coordination sheet listed Shaw Riverfront Logistics in column F, designated, quote, ancillary carrier, spot market overflow only. No dedicated lanes, no priority routing, no master-lessor status. Pure support contractor. I pulled up the live revenue pipeline. The Apex National contract already contributing $1.8 million in projected monthly recurring billings, trending upward with seasonal ramp. The updated pro forma flashed green. Capital recovery month 4. Targeted EBITDA margin 28% in the inaugural fiscal year, scaling to 33% by year 3. My mobile vibrated. Local 901 prefix, unknown contact. I swiped to voicemail. Immediate follow-up text from Reed. Legacy HQ, just submitted desperate RFP for excess capacity. Attached rate sheet demands 40% market premium. I typed. Counter offer at 55% surcharge. Net 10 terms. Cash in advance. His response, thumbs up emoji plus exploding head gif. By 4:42 p.m., the office pulsed with controlled energy, laser printers spitting out addenda, junior analysts stress-testing lean simulations, and the compliance officer uploading hazardous materials endorsements to the state portal. I paused at the corner window, sunlight glinting off the slow-moving barge traffic 8 stories below. Shaw Riverfront had been relegated to subcontractor status within its original geographic stronghold. KS advisors now commanded the entire value chain. 2 months later, Friday, 12:30 p.m., the Peabody Hotel lobby echoed with the familiar quack of the Daily Duck March as the red-carpeted procession crossed toward the fountain. I navigated the marble expanse in measured steps, blazer-buttoned, toward the arched entrance of Chez Philippe restaurant. Patricia rose from a secluded corner table the moment she spotted me, her double-strand pearls shifting against her cream silk blouse, iced tea already waiting in tall crystal glasses. "Kendall, darling," she extended both hands. "Thank you for accepting the invitation on such short notice." I allowed a brief clasp before sliding into the opposite velvet chair. The maitre d' poured my tea without asking. Lemon wedge balanced on the rim. Patricia settled back, napkin smoothed across her lap. "Your father and I have discussed this at length. We owe you a profound apology." The board decision was impulsive. Easton acted without full context. "We should have insisted on dialogue before any vote." I rotated the lemon clockwise with the silver spoon. "The vote is recorded. Contracts have migrated. Apologies don't reverse executed agenda." She scanned the elegant room, white-jacketed waiters gliding between linen-draped tables, then lowered her volume. "He's overwhelmed. Key accounts are terminating. He recognizes the miscalculation." The waiter presented Maryland crab cakes on chilled plates. I sliced one precisely. "Easton demanded authority," I said. "Authority granted. Market response is the natural audit." Patricia's manicured fingers tightened around her glass. "Family legacy isn't an audit line. We taught you loyalty, respect, continuity." I set the knife parallel to the plate. "You taught me to construct value." I constructed. The framework exceeded the original blueprint. She leaned forward, her voice softening. "Sunday dinner at the house. No agendas, just the 4 of us." I withdrew my hand from the table's edge. "I remain a Shaw, Mom, but the Shaw you envisioned isn't the one across from you." Her breath caught, her eyes searching my face for the child she remembered. I signaled the waiter, signed the member charge slip, and rose. "The Duck L'Orange is excellent this season." I turned, heels clicking across polished terrazzo past the fountain splash, and exited into the afternoon sun without glancing back. 6 months later, Tuesday, 8 a.m., the East Memphis War Room glowed with green metrics. Chaos Apex Solutions, my rebranded national platform, posted $18 million trailing 12-month revenue, up 41% quarter over quarter. Reed slid the printed P&L across the table. "Apex National alone drives 62%. Covenant and Delta round out the rest." I initialed the bottom corner. "File with the auditors. Schedule the Series A pitch for Q1. Lennon entered, tablet in hand. "Breaking alert. Shaw Riverfront just announced a 30% headcount reduction. Effective immediately." The room quieted. Analysts paused mid-keystroke. Reed pulled up the press release on the main screen. "Sites, portfolio realignment, and market contraction. Stock down 11% pre-market." I scanned the bullet points. No mention of client exodus. No admission of lost leases. Another notification pinged. Internal memo from the old HQ forwarded by a remaining contact. Subject: Leadership transition. Easton Shaw stepping down as CEO, returning to consulting capacity. Board appoints interim from outside. I closed the file. "They're cauterizing the wound." Reed leaned back. 30% cut means what? 200 heads? 212, Lennon corrected. "Mostly ops and middle management. Sales team gutted last month." I stood and walked to the window. The Mississippi rolled wide and brown below, barges strung like beads. $18 million in new billings. 30% workforce slashed at the legacy firm. Easton sidelined. I spoke to the glass. "Loyalty has value only when it's earned." The river kept moving. My name is Kendall Shaw. I'm 32 years old, and I used to be the chief operating officer at Shaw Riverfront Logistics until this morning. The moment that boardroom door closed behind me, my brother's voice just ripped through the air. We don't need anyone coasting on the family name, Kendall. Easton, who's 25, rocking a flashy new NBA Rolex that was catching the Memphis sunshine streaming through the 12th floor windows, didn't even wait for the room to quiet down. He pointed right at me and said, "Clean out your office by tomorrow." Our dad, the CEO, just sat there, stone-faced, at the head of the table. Last year, he had quietly transferred his voting shares over to Easton. I'd been bringing in the profits, so no one had questioned it until now. The three outside directors were glued to their laptops, not even batting an eye. I nodded once, stood up, and walked right out. If you've ever been stabbed in the back by family at work, hit that like button and subscribe. The real story is about to drop tomorrow morning. The next morning, bright and early at 7:15 a.m., I swiped my badge at the executive elevator and rode up to the 15th floor in silence. The doors opened with a soft chime, and the motion sensor lights came on, lighting my way to the glass doors of my corner office. I pushed through the door, the pneumatic system making a soft hiss behind me. Emerson, who's been my assistant for 7 years now, was already there, perched on the edge of the reception desk, with a steaming cup of coffee in one hand and his phone in the other. "Kendall, your brother has completely lost it." He said, "You built almost 40% of the high-margin lease portfolio yourself, the thing that makes us all the money, and you started doing that when you were just 24 years old." He went on to say, he can't just wipe out a decade of strategic planning with some big announcement in a boardroom. I didn't say anything at first. I walked across the open space in measured steps, my heels making soft sounds on the high-end concrete floor. When I got to the far end, I knelt down next to the credenza and put my thumb on the biometric scanner that was embedded in the wall safe. The panel clicked softly and slid open. Inside, there was just one thing, a thick red-weld folder, worn around the edges from being used so much. The label was written in my own neat handwriting. "KS Warehouse Advisors LLC," I said, flipping the folder open to the official papers that showed when the company was incorporated, exactly 4 years ago. I created this company to be a tax-efficient way to handle leases that cross state lines in different jurisdictions. I explained, quote, "Every single important contract names it as the official lessor, which keeps it separate from the main company." Emerson came closer, looking over the pages that were covered in dense writing. "The board actually looked at these changes and signed off on them," he said. "They put their initials on every part of it. They were only focused on things like accelerated depreciation benefits and like-kind exchange structuring, and they never looked past the controlling entity at the top, never asked any questions or seemed worried about anything." I went to the part that showed a summary of all the leases. "We have 23 active lease agreements right now," I pointed out. "That's 4.8 million square feet that we control. Our current yearly revenue is $28.4 million, and we've consistently grown at a rate of 9.3% for the last 6 quarters. Emerson let out a slow breath. "That part of the business is what keeps us afloat," he said. "Exactly," I replied. I closed the folder, put it in the slim carbon fiber briefcase that was sitting on the visitor chair, and locked it with 2 clicks. And now that lifeline is being moved to someone else's hands. He went to the floor-to-ceiling window, put his hands in his pockets, and watched a towboat pushing 3 barges down the river against the current. "The lease renewals start in exactly 90 days, he said. "Apex, Covenant, Delta. They all depend on your routing tables and lane optimization models. They won't agree to anything without confirmation." "They'll get confirmation," I assured him. I turned the dial on the safe a few times until the bolts inside were locked in place. Then, I put the override key in my blazer pocket. "It's the same algorithms, just operating under a different lessor." Emerson turned back to me. "You're really activating the contingency plan." "The plan was activated when Dad transferred the voting control last year," I replied. "I just set up the way for it to be released beforehand." He nodded, understanding what I meant. "So, it's all set to go now." I looked at the clock on the wall. 7:29 a.m. Tell facilities management that I'll be completely out of here by 11 a.m. No boxes, no movers, just one briefcase. Emerson hesitated at the door. "Kendall, what about your parents?" I walked past him into the bright hallway. "Parents don't handle lease commitments," I said. "Shippers and tenants do." The elevator arrived quickly. I pushed the button for G, the garage level. The ride down was smooth and uneventful. At the lobby, the security guard waved me through. No need to scan my badge to leave. I walked across the plaza, went down the ramp to the garage, and found my car in my assigned spot, C4. I put the briefcase on the passenger seat, started the engine, and backed out. The backup camera showed nothing behind me. I drove up the ramp, came out into the sunlight, and smoothly merged onto Riverside Drive. The Mississippi River was sparkling to my left, calm and vast. I had spent 10 years building and maintaining the family's business. Now it was all mine to control. I pressed down on the accelerator and headed east, watching the headquarters building shrink in the rearview mirror. That afternoon, around 2 p.m., I was driving on I-240 when the dashboard lit up, showing that the office landline was being forwarded to my car's Bluetooth. I pressed the accept button without taking my eyes off the road. "Kendall Shaw, this is Craig Brooks from Apex Warehousing." I could hear the sounds of the warehouse in the background: forklifts, alarms, and pallet jacks. Easton just sent an email saying that he's the new contact person. "Our master lease is up for renewal in 60 days, and we depend on your routing algorithms, which save us 18%. What's going on here?" "He'll figure it out soon enough," I said. Craig made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a growl. "The signature block isn't tied to the family name. Send me the renewal package, and I'll get the terms signed by the actual lessor before the day is over." "Sending it now." The line went dead. I stayed in my lane, keeping my hand steady on the wheel. 9 minutes passed. My cell phone vibrated, showing that the CEO was calling. I answered. "Kendall, it's Jonth Ju." Easton's words came out quickly, his voice getting louder. "Craig is refusing to extend the lease without the original documents." I moved into the right lane, signaling to take the next exit. 4 years ago, I completely rebuilt the leasing structure, I explained. KS Advisor handles the leasing, which is separate from the main company for tax purposes. Dad reviewed and signed off on everything, thinking it was just a routine thing. No one thought that the company could operate on its own. "You can't possibly." I hung up. I took the off-ramp, went onto the surface streets, and drove back towards downtown. I parked in the visitor's deck on level 3. Elevator to 15. The hallway was empty, with the buzzing of the lights overhead. I put my keycard in, pushed the office door open one last time. The brass nameplate was still there. Shaw Riverfront Logistics. I got a screwdriver from the desk drawer, took out the 4 screws, lifted the nameplate off, and dropped it into the cardboard box next to the credenza. The laptop was already powered down. I erased everything on the SSD and unplugged all the cables. I took one last look around, making sure everything was gone. Then I stepped back into the hallway and closed the door. The electronic lock made a solid thunk. Back in the garage, I got in my car, backed out, and drove down the ramp to the exit. The gate lifted automatically. I accelerated, heading south towards Germantown, leaving the city behind me. 2 days later, on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m., my phone buzzed as the first SUV pulled into my driveway. It was Reed, a project manager who had worked with me for 10 years, along with 6 other people carrying laptops and blueprints. "Core team assembled," Reed said as he walked through the door. "The non-compete only applies to Tennessee. Arkansas and Mississippi are wide open." I led them into the living room, which had oak herringbone floors. The sofa had been moved back, and there were 8 folding chairs around the coffee table. Reed quickly introduced everyone: 3 operations leads, 2 data analysts, and 1 compliance specialist. They had all resigned from their jobs at 9 a.m. Lennon, my college roommate who's now a lawyer, arrived last with a briefcase full of documents. We all sat down. I plugged my laptop into the wall screen and opened the KS Advisor presentation. The goal is to prove that the model works without using the family name. I clicked to the slide that showed the locations. We have 2 pilot warehouses, one in Little Rock and one in Jackson. That's 600,000 square feet. We have a 6-month agreement with the option to buy at market value. Lennon passed out copies of the documents. The landlords are already approved, and we've locked in a lease rate that's 15% below market value, as long as we move in and invest in the property right away. Reed turned to the equipment schedule. Racking, conveyors, and WMS are all included in the budget. The installation will be done within 30 days of moving in. One of the operations leads raised his hand. "What about the routing engine and the lane optimization software?" "My code has already been moved to a private cloud. Access will be granted as soon as we sign the agreement." Lennon opened the compensation folder. "Everyone's base salary will be increased by 15%. You'll also get 1% equity on day 1, with a 4-year vesting schedule and full acceleration if there's a change of control. The compliance specialist looked at the benefits page. Medical, dental, and 401k are all effective on day one, with the same insurance company, an upgraded dental plan, and a 6% match. Reed leaned forward. The timeline is to be up and running in 30 days, with the first truckload arriving 45 days after we sign. Everyone nodded in agreement. Lennon took out a stack of pens. Let's sign the agreement first, then the individual offers. I signed the first page, dated it, and passed it around. 7 signatures followed, each one deliberate in the warm lighting. Reed capped his pen. We're officially in business. Lennon gathered the documents. I'll file the paperwork with the Secretary of State tonight, and we'll amend the LLC agreement tomorrow. I handed out the offer letters, with everyone's names, titles, and salaries already filled in. Each team member reviewed, signed, and dated the letters. We shook hands all around. Firm committed. By 8:17 p.m., the team had left, their headlights shining in the cul-de-sac. As their cars started, I locked the door, poured myself a glass of water, and spread the signed documents across the table to review them one last time. Phase 1 was locked and loaded. A week later, on Monday at 9 a.m., my laptop pinged with a Zoom link. Emerson was on the screen, sitting in his home office with his shelves of binders behind him. Kendall, the board just called an emergency meeting for 10 a.m. Your name is the only thing on the agenda to clarify your employment status. They expect you in the conference room on the 12th floor. I muted the live drone feed from the Jackson site that was playing on my other monitor. Decline, I'm busy. He leaned closer to the camera. Your dad's running the meeting. The outside directors are demanding a full report. Understood. I ended the Zoom call. The house phone rang right away. It was my mom calling. I waited 4 rings before answering. Kendall? Patricia's voice had the southern drawl that she used for social events. Your father wants you to come downtown and talk about this. Not as an executive, but as his daughter. I watched the landlord's cursor blinking in the lease draft, waiting for me to finish editing the indemnity clause. Tell him that I'm in a critical negotiation. I declined the meeting invite on my phone. Patricia paused, the silence hanging in the air. He's concerned. We both are. Blood is thicker than any contract, sweetheart. The landlord sent a message. Green light on final red lines. I replied. Move on to section 8.2. Blood doesn't retroactively change board votes that take away 10 years of revenue. I kept my voice calm. I have to go at 9:15. She sighed. Kendall, please. I put the phone back on the receiver, turned off the ringer, and went back to the video conference. Sorry for the interruption. I said to the people on the screen, which included Lennon, Reed, and the new site superintendents. Let's finalize this expansion package. Reed shared the updated financial model, which showed that the capital expenditures would be phased over 18 months with a return of more than 22%. Lennon showed the incentive details. The Economic Development Authority has approved the 10-year,